Hi, in this video we're going to be looking at the influences in the business environment and looking more specifically at the external influences. So firstly, what is the business environment? Well, there's really two factors here. So one is the external environment, and that is they are the factors that a business has little to no control over. They're external to the business. They really can't control them at all. And then we've got the internal environment. So they're the factors that a business has moderate to full control over. Because they're internal, they're within the business, they can actually do something about them. So in this video, we're going to be looking specifically at the external environment. So the factors that a business has little to no control over at all because they're happening outside of the business. The first external factor is economic influences. Now, the Australian economy experiences economic cycles of booms and busts, referred to as the business cycle. Now, because the level of economic activity is always fluctuating, always going up and down, no business is immune to the effects of the business cycle. So, after a period of prosperity, so when the Australian economy is doing very, very well, it'll eventually slow down. Business activity will slow down. Either a recession or a depression will be reached. So a period of negative growth in the economy. And then eventually the business picks up again and it continues in that cycle, okay, where it goes boom, bust, like that. And because it's something that's happening in the economy, in the wider economy, the Joe's Fish and Chips, the corner shop there can't really sort of, call up the Australian government and say, hey, can you stop our economy from going into a bust because I'd really like to keep my business. It's something that that they can't control, which then leads to then having to come up with some strategies to help them mitigate the negative impacts on this. The next influence here is financial. Now, since 1983, when Australia floated the dollar and deregulated the financial system, it's now meant that financial services are much more flexible. And not only are they more flexible, but there's now more financial products available, not only in Australia, but also around the world. So businesses now can access more products in the financial system in Australia. However, they can't control the type of product that is offered, they can't control the interest rate that is offered, and they can't control any global implications that has as well. So just like the economic influences, they need to come up with some strategies to help mitigate any negative impacts from global or even local financial services. Geographic influences here as well are very big, and it's something that a business can't control. They can't control demography, which is a change in sex, age, income. So what they need to do though here is they need to change the way that they deliver the needs and wants of consumers. If they find that the income of a certain area has either gone up or gone down, they need to then re-look at their pricing strategies and say, well, hang on, are they charging too much for a product in an area where people can't afford it? Or are they charging too little in an area where people can more than afford it, so therefore it looks like it's not good quality? So that's something they need to look at. Another geographical influence is globalization. So because products are now available around the world at increasingly competitive prices, businesses now also need to sort of come up with strategies and say, well, how are we going to compete with this? How are we going to compete with a transnational corporation that operates all around the world and makes billions of dollars of profit and can charge very little for their products? What are we going to do to try and compete with that? And again, that's something they can't control. They can't call up, McDonald's, or they can't call up Apple. They can't call up Coca-Cola and say, can you stop selling your product in this area because I'd need to try and make a living. Now, social influences are very important as well because society is ever changing. Businesses need to really stay tuned to what's happening and how they can mitigate any problems. Now, consumers today becoming increasingly more responsive to environmental issues, and they want products that are not detrimental to the environment. So, recyclable products, products that don't promote the logging or deforestation of an area or the death of animals through the loss of habitat for products. Um, they want things that they can feel glad about using and feel happy about using, knowing that they're not contributing to any negative issues as well. We've also got family-friendly programs. So there's a growing desire for more family-friendly programs to try and strike a better balance in the work-life ratio to try and avoid conflict. And a lot of strategies need to be put in place here. However, businesses can't determine the social influences that are going to happen. So while the business might say, well, we'd like to have all our staff on site from this hour to this hour to be productive, they might realize, well, we might need flexible working hours for mothers and fathers who look after children. Or we might need on site childcare for mothers and fathers who can't get a babysitter but still need to get to work. Now, legal influences are quite important here. Businesses must comply with local, state, and federal legislation. Now, examples of this are taxation. They can't determine if they want to pay taxes or not. They have to. And they can't also determine how much tax they pay. They have to pay what the governing bodies say. They must comply with industrial relations, WH&S, equal employment opportunities, anti-discrimination. So they're just a brief overview, but there's a lot of legislation they need to cover. Now, meeting those legal requirements is known as compliance costs. So the cost of being compliant. So if they need to pay X amount of dollars to make the workplace comply with WHS regulations, that is then known as a compliance cost. Now, I've picked out the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, is the example here. And this is a major legal influence because they're an independent statutory authority. And what that means is that an act of parliament, so a piece of legislation has been enacted that says that the ACCC can operate nationally and can enforce competition laws, consumer protection laws, ensure that all trading is done fairly across Australia as well, and failing to comply with any of this legislation can lead to some hefty financial penalties for businesses. Now, another influence is politics. Now, this is something that businesses can't really influence because it's something that happens outside of the business, so it's external. But businesses need to stay aware of changes to government policies. Now, with every change in government, there is certainly a chance that policies will change because there would have been opposition to the policy from the opposing party at one stage anyway. So I've used the goods and services tax, the GST, carbon tax, labour market reforms here as examples. Now, the labour market reforms under the Howard government, they brought in changes to awards. Then the following government then came in and said, no, we don't like it, we're going to change this and that. So businesses really can't predict what's going to happen from one government to the next. All they've got to do is stay ready to act. Now, we've also got institutional influences. So businesses need to understand that there's going to be influence from state, federal, and local governments. That there's other regulatory bodies they need to be aware of, such as the Office of Fair Trading in New South Wales, or the ACCC, or the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, ASIC. And then we've also got other. Now, other is basically your trade unions, your employer associations, the ASX, or the Australian Securities Exchange, also known as the stock market. Now, everything that happens in these institutions as well has a direct impact on how businesses operate, but businesses cannot control what happens. We've also got technological influences. Now, technology changes extremely rapidly, and a business needs to stay aware of what those changes are and needs to understand that its competitors are going to be moving just as quick, if not quicker, in implementing brand new technology. Every business is trying to get a competitive edge and a competitive advantage over its competitor. And the only way to do that is to stay current with technology. So a business that fails to do that may fail in their business operations entirely. Now, unless you're a business that creates that technology, you really have no control over what new technology is going to be created and how or when it will be implemented. We've also got the influence of your competition. Now, this relates to how much competition exists for a business in a particular industry. Now, there are four things we need to look at here. Market concentration. So, how many businesses are currently in a certain industry? Now, this is a bit fiddly. So, we've got the monopoly, which is only one firm that controls everything in an industry. So, for example, Australia Post. We've got an oligopoly, which is a small number of large firms that control everything in the industry. So think of banks. Yes, there are a lot of banks in Australia, but a lot of them are quite small. We've only got about 4 large banks in Australia that control everything. Same with all companies as well. Then we've got monopolistic competition. Now, this is a large number of buyers and sellers. They use differentiation methods such as advertising to try and get customers. And this is usually a clothing store. So, you go to a shopping centre, you've got 5 clothing stores. You think, oh, they're all the same. So, what they really need to do is advertise differently, try and draw customers in through advertising as opposed to going into the competitor, which is just next door, who might have the exact same thing, trying to get you into their store instead. And then we've got perfect competition. Now, this is a large number of small businesses. They sell basically the same product or very similar products, and the only way to get customers is to compete on prices. And this is your fruit and vegetable stores. There's only so many ways you can advertise an orange to a consumer that really the only thing you can do is say, I'm only going to charge you 50 cents a kilo, and the guy next door is going to charge you $1 a kilo. Ease of entry is very closely linked to market concentration. Obviously, the easiest market to enter will be a perfect competition. Anyone can enter freely. You can open up a stall on the side of the road that sells vegetables and fruit if you wanted to. But you couldn't necessarily open up a rival to Australia Post. They control everything that happens in that industry, so it's very difficult. So it's a bit of a sliding scale as it goes from monopoly to oligopoly to monopolistic to perfect. Then we've got the local and foreign competitors. Now, depending on the kind of competition you've got from overseas, or things like eBay, things like Amazon. So it doesn't have to be physical stores. It could even be the fact that people can now use the technology at their disposal to buy products 24/7 means that businesses need to be aware of the competitive situation, not just of Bob's Bakery down the road as opposed to Jim's Bakery, which you own. It's now, hang on, people can buy stuff over the phone. They can buy gourmet items now as well. So how are you going to fix that? And then we've also got marketing strategies. So what are your competitors doing in order to promote their business, market their business, as opposed to what you're doing? And what can you do to reverse what's happening and get a competitive edge over them instead? Finally, we have changes in markets. So changes in financial markets, changes in labor markets, and changes in consumer markets. Now, what this basically means is that in terms of things like financial regulation, interest rates, either locally or around the world, businesses don't really have have any influence over what's going to happen. Same with the labor markets; they have no influence on the level of employment or unemployment in a nation. So that's something that they need to be aware of. That every other business might be suffering from not being able to find workers just as badly as they are, but they can't influence anything else about that. And then we've got changes in consumer markets as well. So what do people want? What do people need? How much money do they have available? And what where are they buying products from? So I hope that this brief introduction to external influences in the business environment has given you enough information to come to some sort of understanding as to what businesses can't really avoid in their operations. Thank you.